Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Ay, audible.
Medyo mahina.
Tina. Wait lang ha. How about this? Can you hear me now? Reynan, can you hear me?
Okay
Okay
na.
na? Sige, sige. Sige. So we'll start with, I will continue with unit 4 of today's topic. But before that, we'll quick review on what we have last time, understanding network vulnerability. Now, if you can still recall, so network security vulnerability has two types. Now, it comes in two forms, right? So it's physical and non-physical. So some of the items here were already part of our quiz last week, but mind you guys, your quiz results or quiz scores are very low. So I'll just find um, time to insert another quiz after the midterm examination so that we can pull up your scores. So hindi siya magbutong sa inyong final grade later on. So, bawi kita sa laboratory, bawi kita sa iba na um, mga parts sa grading system natin. Okay? So, if possible, participation, attendance, and recitation is just 10% of your scores, but your quizzes is 30%, and as well as your major exam comes in 40%, and laboratory comes with 10%. Okay. All right. So yeah, um, we have also discussed common network vulnerability, right? So those are we have four: malware, social engineering, we have outdated software, and the misconfigured um, devices or firewalls. And also, we discussed some symptoms of infected with malware. So, um, if you can recall, or if you have experienced those symptoms, no? You may share it with us as we have already discussed it in the last week during our face-to-face. Um, what are the symptoms of infected malware or infected symptoms of infected malware sa inyong mga device? What are the symptoms? There are four. Yes, Hannah.
Isa lamang or apa ang tanan.
Yeah, pwede man apat.
So the first symptom, ma'am, is running slower. Second is sending emails without user action. Third is randomly rebooting, and fourth is starting unknown process.
Okay, thank you. And there are actually best practices in preventing the network security vulnerability. You may give me a random answer. The best practices in preventing a network security vulnerability. Kyle?
um, update regularly update your software and use strong passwords, encrypt your data, and i-activate sa naman.
Okay. Okay, next. What are what is the impact in businesses, or what is the impact of network security vulnerability in the businesses? Ano daw ang impact niya sa businesses? I think we also discussed that, right? Ano ang impact ng network security vulnerability sa businesses? So, yeah, here is the answer. Enterprises problems may come, of course, now we know coming from malware, ransomware, phishing attacks, unpatched software misconfiguration, and a study shown that 58 or like 10% of found vulnerabilities exploits where um, does not require any programming skills. So, bali, ang study mo sa corporate information na it was submitted na ang vulnerability sa mga companies organization is 84% coming from the different problems like malwares, ransomware, phishing attacks. No? So, 10% extra comes from those people who are not skilled, right? So, coming from those weakest link in the IT infrastructure is are the no? Human error, of course. Okay, so next, what is the meaning of CVE? What's the meaning of CVE? Yan. Jen, you raising your hand?
Common vulnerabilities and exposures, ma'am.
And exposures. Yes, that's right. All right, so we have also three types of or three classification or three types of networks. Sorry, Chief.
Hardware-based network security vulnerability, software-based, and human-based.
Okay, good. Okay, now I noticed that same people from uh, our 1 o'clock class are the same people na nag-recite or nag-participate. What about the others? Di ano ka mo yan? So please try to participate. No? Especially those na palabsent, no? Ibawian yung mga inyong scores, no? Mas mag-participate na lang. Okay? Right. So, yeah, this is just a review class para hindi ka mabudla yan sa midterm examination. Kapag the stored knowledge ka na. So, let's continue with our lesson no? With Unit 4. So, hopefully matapos natin this afternoon. So, I can give you time to study and hopefully I can or we can create a reviewer for your midterm examination. We just put out my slide. Okay, yeah, I've seen this on your screen. So to start with, Unit 4 is all about vulnerability assessment. So this is a continuation of your network security vulnerability. So we go now to assessment. Paano mag-assess sa vulnerability sa isa ka host or isa ka network? Okay, so this today's topic covers assessment, vulnerability assessment um, compared to vulnerability management, and also we'll be able to discuss vulnerability assessment process, and of course the technique that includes the penetration testing, the vulnerability scanner tools and techniques, and hopefully Wireshark and Puppet analysis. So the definition, can you read at the definition? Read it. Right. Thank you. So yes, that's the definition of vulnerability assessment. It's a systematic review of security weaknesses in an information system. Now, with regards to the management or the vulnerability management, we differentiate, the assessment and management. So for assessment, it is the process of defining, identifying, classifying, and prioritizing vulnerabilities in computer systems, applications, and network infrastructure, while the management is defined as process for identifying, evaluating, treating, and reporting on security vulnerabilities in systems and the software that runs them. Okay, so if you notice, same process of identifying, evaluating, treating, and reporting. So management is more on a result, uh, and runs through a software, while the vulnerability assessment it runs through the computer system, application, and network infrastructure. So please take note of the difference of these two. Okay, next, the key points. The difference between the two, however, is that management is a continuous cycle that includes vulnerability assessment. So, meaning to say, vulnerability assessment is part of the management. Okay, so under siya sa umbrella sa management. So, later on, we're going to describe or to identify the cycle, no, sa management, and assessment is part of it. So, where VA, or stands for Vulnerability Assessment, identifies and classifies the risk in your network infrastructure. So management goes on a step further and includes decision on whether to remediate, mitigate, or accept the risk. So management is also concerned with general infrastructure, improving and reporting. So it's more on um, remediating, no, mitigating the reporting to management. All right, so this is the life cycle of vulnerability management. So it is read as start, assess. Of course, the network operations team will identify, assess, scan, and build a report. Okay, so with the prioritized stage of this cycle, ang report na generate niya sa assessment phase. Amo na siyang i-prioritize and then add correct context to the risk. Okay? The third one is act. The prioritized threats are then sorted into remediate, mitigate, and accept process. So remediation calls for removing the threat coverage, not it passes. While mitigation, on the other hand, reduces the likelihood of a vulnerability being exploited. Next one is reassess. Once the team has processed the risk according to their final recommendation, they'll need to rescan and revalidate the risks that have been properly mitigated or accepted. And then the last one is the team should evaluate their metrics, checking that they're accurate and up to date to ensure that they're correctly assessing the risk. Okay, so those are the vulnerability management cycle. Let's move on to sa management. Yeah, so let's move on to the vulnerability assessment. It has its own process, ano? So it has security scanning process. So it has four steps. We have vulnerability identification, analysis, risk assessment, and mitigation. Now, if you notice, my mitigation kit na nakatabo assessment. Of course, no? It's lain-lain lang na pag-deliver. So here, now if you can read this first step here, can you please read Leandro? Leandro, vulnerability identification.
Okay. Vulnerability identification. To draft a comprehensive list of an application's vulnerabilities, which includes vulnerability databases, vendor vulnerability announcements, asset management systems, and threat intelligence feeds to identify security weaknesses.
Okay, thank you. Next, please read analysis, the second step, email. Okay.
Analysis. The objectives of this step is to identify the source and root cause of the vulnerabilities identified in step 1.
Okay, thank you. Next one, Ken. Ken, sorry.
The objective of this step is the prioritizing of vulnerabilities. It involves security analysis, assigning a rank or severity score to each vulnerability.
Okay, and the last one is read mm, Gemma. Gemma.
The objective of this step is closing of security gaps. It is typically a joint effort with security staff, development, and operations teams who determine the most effective path for remediation or mitigation of each vulnerability.
Okay, good. Right, so next here is the are the tools that are needed to perform the vulnerability assessment. So we have first we have a web application scanners that test for and simulate known attack patterns. Second is we have protocol scanners that search for vulnerable protocol ports and network services. And the last are the network scanners that help visualize network and discover warning signals like stray IP addresses, spoof packet, and suspicious packet generation from single IP address. Um, this is an example of vulnerability assessment report. Now, it should be, um, yeah, it identifies and categorize vulnerabilities found on a network. So, a security expert conducts vulnerability analysis of the network scan to prioritize threats. Now, from this action plan, from this, an action plan can be created with steps to mitigate vulnerabilities. For example, um, maintaining up to date patches and implementing a patch management procedure that may be a valid recommendation. So this is what the vulnerability assessment looks like. Now it starts with executive summary, and then you will it follows with scan results and then so forth. So risk assessment and go on. So if you have time, please take a look at this report here. So um, you will be performing this film format as a final output in this subject. Okay, so I'll just give you mga instructions after the midterm examination. Now, after discussing the vulnerability assessment tools, we go now to the technique. And one of the techniques that we're going to discuss this afternoon is the penetration test. Fundamentals of the PP here is defined as a type of security testing in which highly skilled human hackers are hired to identify and exploit vulnerabilities in a digital environment. The digital environment may include a web application, network, or other type of digital assets. So, ang work from hackers, skilled hacker, or let's say white hackers. They are white hackers. They are hired to test the system of the organization. Okay? So don't be confused of black hackers and the white hackers. So, ang black hackers ang may intention of exploiting the organization, while the white hackers here are hired, of course, to test the organization's security and defense. Okay, so type of the penetration testing, we have three. Okay, so we have the black box, we have the gray box, PT, and the white box, PT. Now, comes with a black box penetration testing or penetration test. The tester is given the bare minimum level of information when it comes to credential, while the gray box penetration test is given slightly more information than they would be for a black box penetration test. Um, but however, the information is still extremely limited. While the white box penetration testing gives tester the most information to work with prior to conducting the test. Okay. Now, it was mentioned that penetration testing is conducted in cloud, in web application, in network application. So here is cloud testing focuses on evaluating the security controls, configuration, and access mechanism within hybrid and multi-cloud infrastructures. For example, on cloud platforms for Amazon, web services or AWS, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform or the GCP, and others, as well as for the containers, Kubernetes, and the control panel. So, um, it's called cloud penetration testing. Next is network penetration testing. Services are delivered using the PaaS model or the penetration testing as a service model, and it includes internal, external, host-based, and thick client networks. Another one is application penetration testing. It composed of application is delivered using the bridge lock. Now, by the way, the bridge lock here is a brand or a company or an organization, of course. Example naman siya. So there are a lot of um, org or company man na or brand man na nag-aano sa penetration testing. So, it includes the web application, API, mobile apps, and the clients. So here, internal web application testing. Uh, can you read that, uh, Theodore? Are you here? Wala tayo. Oh, sino pa? Next, Delphine. Can you read the internal web application testing? Wala man. Ed man. Ed Carlo.
Internal
First,
web app. Hi. Internal web app pen testing. Internal web application penetration testing provides you with critical insights into the security of your internal web applications and applications architecture, technology used, and internal systems to identify,
yeah.
validate, and prioritize vulnerabilities for remediation.
Okay, thank you. The second one is external web application pen testing. Daniel,
External web app pen testing. Our external web application penetration testing identifies potential attack vectors and addresses specific vulnerabilities depending on the application's architecture and technologies used.
okay, thank you. Next one, we have another one. We have another two. Can you please read the description of mobile app testing? Perales, Adrian.
Um, Mobile application penetration testing will identify and fix vulnerabilities that could be exploited by attackers to compromise the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the mobile app for both iOS and Android devices and the data it handles.
Okay, thank you. This is a thick line. All right, let me please read the last one for application penetration testing. It should be a quick client application penetration testing. So Jaden, Pacific Car.
T-client app pen testing. T-client application penetration testing identifies vulnerabilities and security weaknesses of software application that runs on a user's local device, such as a desktop computer or mobile device, to communicate with the server or remote system over the network.
Okay, thank you so much. Now let's move on to the web application penetration test. So pen testing your web application and user credentials on. So we offer human deliverables and continuous pen testing giving you flexibility and versatility time for businesses and security. So it's more on um, your credentials. So um, I'll be showing you later the how to turn on your credentials in the dark web. So maybe some of you have already done that before. So maybe you're oversharing your credential over the web. So we have if as a user for Google, and I think Google or Facebook or protected manner. So yes, importance of pen tests. So organization rely on penetration testing to achieve different objectives that primarily fall into two categories. We have security validation and compliance testing. With this validation here, validation, security validation pen testing. Um, Its purpose is that to include building customers' trust, passing vendor efforts, fulfilling contractual obligation, and obtaining security certificates. Is to confirm that security controls are effective both internal leadership and outside stakeholders. Um, for compliance and business, have to meet the rigorous compliance requirements by penetration testing systems. So they also reinforce their brand reputation, save on um, fines associated with non-compliance, and reduce the stress of compliance audits. So there are two categories of or of penetration testing. So the security validation and the compliance testing. Now we move on to the pen test report. This will outline all the findings, including the list of risks, of security risks discovered, and remediation guidance to fix the most critical risks to the organization. So it explains also, the hacker's perspective for a security leader and provides precise steps to proactively mitigate security risks before impactful security incident occurs. Now we move on to penetration testing methods. We have external testing, we have internal testing, blind testing, double blind testing, and targeted testing. Okay, now here with external testing, this test targets a company's online assets, like of course, no, its website, web application, email, not mentioning the FB or Facebook accounts and the domain name servers. So, um, white hackers are there, are hired first to test on how secure the website is, how secure the web application, the emails, and the domain servers. With internal testing, the aim is to evaluate the effectiveness of internal security controls and detection mechanisms. So from the inside naman siya mag-test, no? So within the organization. With blind testing, this approach tests the organization's incident response capabilities and readiness to handle unexpected attacks. While the double blind testing, its objective is to evaluate the organization's overall security posture, including the effectiveness of monitoring and response mechanism under realistic and with targeted testing, this is training exercise where the security team gets live feedback from the tester, learning how to improve their defenses. Okay, so those are the pen testing methods. We move on to the penetration testing tools or the pen test tools. Now there are a lot of tools for PT, but these are just few of the most famous ones. So with Nmap, it is a network exploration tool and security scanner. It can be used to identify hosts and services on a network as well as the security issues. Nessus, it is a vulnerability scanner. It can be used to find vulnerability in systems and applications. And of course, Wireshark, my favorite. This is my favorite. It is a packet analyzer. It can be used to capture and analyze network traffic. Um, and of course, no Burp Suite. It is a web application securing testing tool. It can be used to find security issues in web applications. So this core here has actually a different function. So for Nmap, ang ginapangita niya is ma-identify niya ang host and services on a network. Okay? So gonna scan niya lang. Nessus here is a vulnerability scanner to find vulnerabilities in systems and application, while the Wireshark captures and analyzes network traffic, and the Burp Suites analyze security issues in web application. Now, these are just few of the penetration testing tools that we're defined in our discussion. Let's move on to the penetration testing stage. Um, First is planning and recognizing. Uh, If test goals are defined and intelligence is gathered or data gathering stage siya. Second is scanning. Scanning tools are used to understand how a target responds to intrusions. The third one is gaining access. Web application attacks are staged to uncover the target's vulnerability. And the fourth one is maintaining access. APTs are imitated to see if a vulnerability can be used to maintain access. And the last one is analysis and WAF configuration. These are the results configure WAF settings before testing is run again. Now, the rules of engagement. Saan po ikaw conduct sa sa penetration test? Important document. For the important document, it should define the purpose and scope. Okay? It makes everyone aware of the test parameters. Dapat naka ma-inform ka na, nakapag-meron ka na. May nakapanood sa testing na conduct sa mga adlaw. Right? Next is what's the next? Type of testing and schedule. Types of testing and schedule. On-site physical breach, internal test, external test. So, depende na sa hacker no? or high skilled na hire kung ano type ng test at or ano iya ganito no is it an internal external ba internal test external test ba on-site physical breach. So when it should be conducted, normal will it be a normal working hours when sometimes naga-ubra ang tanan or after 6 p.m. only. Okay. So my question is, if you are the high skilled hacker na hire, when is the best time for you to conduct the penetration test? If you are hired as to conduct the penetration testing, when will be the right time? Will it be in the normal working hours or after 6 p.m. only? Yes, Rayman. Why? May I know why we want to conduct the penetration testing after 6 p.m.? Oh, yeah, okay. So that is your ano ya, choice. Imo na yan prerogative. Kay ikaw ya ang high skilled na na professional. Okay? So what about the others? Since mo mapili isang normal working hours. Yes, Kyle.
Normal working hours because nakita mo sa happens mo ang kapatabo in the normal setting day kung paano nila na-regulate ang nilang system so mas tapos or like mas na-work na yung pag-penetration testing lang. Kahit mas siyagid ba lang ang pag-handle sa system nila sa typical nila nga day ng obra.
Okay. All right. So yes, each of you have your own reason why would you choose that kind of schedule. Okay. So of course, now before doing or engaging in the penetration testing, IP addresses ranges. You should know that first. Of course, backup. No? And please mag-conduct sa mga penetration testing or whatever vulnerability scanners or kung ano man ang mga pag please conduct your full backup. Right? So, of course, no, may mga emergency contacts dapat pala natin how to handle sensitive information and in-scope and out-scope of devices or application. So those are the rules of engagement. Next. Thank you very much. Another one is try to break into the system. Be careful. So this can cause a denial of service or loss of data. So while everyone else knows a time kaya gusto niya during daytime, during working hours. So if you're going to do that, please be careful. This can cause a denial of service or loss of data along the way. So buffer overflow can cause instability, gain privilege escalation also. And you may also need to try many different vulnerability types, such as password brute force, social media, database injection, and buffer overflows. So those are like methods, to test the system. Next here is a penetration testing report. If you have fun, you may also want to see this or try to check on this because this is also one aside from the vulnerability assessment report. You will be conducting the penetration testing report also. So you may choose a program or a system or information system to conduct the penetration testing tools later on. Okay, right? That's after or before final examination. Right? So this is an example. So at least meron kang idea how to develop your penetration testing report. Right? So okay, so I think this ends our discussion for Unit 4. This is very short. And please try to fill up the attendance sheet here. If you are present today, I can see that 12 lang ang naka-fill up. No? How many are you today? 25. So I expect 25 people will fill up the attendance. Any questions so far? Any questions? Okay. Yes, then.
Regarding bala ma'am sa assignment, ma'am, when ang deadline nakato, ma'am, kay asat wala pa kami certificate or participation alin sa DepCon.
Okay. So, ang ano ko lang, i-follow up ka lang to sa ilang chair, si Fred, no? Kay para ma-send na sa inyo. Provide naman sila sa inyo ng email. Ano nga email ang nag-provide nyo sa ila, Webso? Personal email, Gmail?
I think Gmail.
Sige, i-follow up.
Webso.
Webso? Sige. Okay, so I'll just, possible is ang iba, hindi pa nakasend sa Webso. So, yeah, we'll follow up. No? If nga need nila sa personal email, ang ma-ask ko sa